And it's like, don't get me wrong, like Travis is cool, but who would you rather party with?
Depends where I'm at.
Yeah, no. Like, just assume that this isn't. There's nothing else that could come of this outside of just having fun with the boys.
Oh, then it's not clearly Jason Kelce.
Right.
I don't think I could party with him.
Well, you don't think you could hang?
No, I doubt it. I doubt it. I mean, he would bury you, right?
He can crush him. He can put him back.
Everything, dude. Everything that's at that party is going in his stomach at some point in time.
There's just pictures of him out there, videos with no shirt on in the... Yeah.
Like, that dude's putting away a full rack and a full pizza at that party.
Easy.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
Hey, good morning. Welcome back from the weekend. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NBA strategy show. A little 7-game action today to kick off the week. Dave Loughran with me, Josh Engleman at Josh Engleman on the Twitters, breaking it all down for the second time already today. What's up, brother?
Not too much, man. Feeling better today than I expected to feel after traveling home from Nashville yesterday. We landed in Wilmington. Our bags are still in Charlotte, so we just had to leave They're getting delivered to the house today. No big deal. They're here now. So that happened, which was annoying.
How long were you there for? Friday
to Sunday.
Okay. That sucks. I've fortunately never had him lose or like misplace any of my baggage, but I'm just a straight carry-on. Like if I'm doing a 3-day or less trip, I'm a carry-on. The problem, did you go with your wife?
I did.
Problem is if I go with my wife somewhere, you can't do that because she'll pack for 14 weeks over 3 days. With me, dude, no joke. Backpack and then carry on straight in the overhead. That's it.
Yeah. So the only reason that we checked bags is because it costs nothing to check the bags. If I had to pay to check that bag, I had a carry-on. She went big suitcase. But I checked my carry-on because there was no cost associated with it.
But that's what I'm saying. Of course she went big suitcase.
Yeah. And it also depends on if it's a direct flight or not. If you have a direct flight, then I would always check my bag because it's going to be there with you.
The layover's trouble for sure.
Yes. And that's what caught us. We got in late to Charlotte.
But for me, I still won't check my bag. If it's a weekend trip, I'm still not checking my bag because there's nothing better than getting off your flight and then just going straight to catch an Uber or something.
The only thing that I don't like, the good thing about checking a bag is even if I get to my destination, I don't give a shit if I don't have it. Like I'll have my book bag with the stuff that I definitely need to have.
Right, you can rewear the same clothes and buy a toothbrush.
Or I'll just go buy new clothes. If I don't care.
Yeah. But I'm saying if they're like it'll be here by tomorrow, you can rewear the same clothes for a day. That's not that
absolutely.
difficult.
You're gonna be fine.
You do it anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Every day, constantly.
Anyway, happy to have you guys with us. Hopefully you had a great weekend. We're talking some basketball today. If you don't mind, take 1 single second to atone for your sins here on a Monday morning. Hit that thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment down below if you're listening or watching after the fact. Try and read and respond to all of them. And if you want, all of our stuff that has any shelf life goes straight to podcast form, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any of those archaic platforms that are still out there that you probably didn't know about. I found out recently we still upload to that. It's amazing stuff, but we do. How'd your weekend go?
We're big on MySpace.
How was your weekend?
It was good. It was good. I had some fun.
You play UFC?
MMA? No, I did not play UFC. I had no ability to. But Nashville sucked. Nashville sucked.
Cold.
Yeah. So 0-degree wind chill.
Yeah, that's not what you're hoping for.
And they got a bunch of snow right before we got there. And they don't have any ability to clear that off. So every sidewalk was just like 3 inches of snow and ice. So
when it snows around there, people act like it's the apocalypse, right?
Yeah. Roads were fine, but you couldn't we had to take an Uber everywhere because 1, it's 0 outside. And then 2, for 15 minutes of walking, it's actually 30 because you have to penguin walk on the sidewalk or you're just going to eat shit because it's horrific conditions on the sidewalk. Yeah. I couldn't believe it. It blew my mind. I saw a Starbucks. The whole pavement at Starbucks was covered. I was really thinking to myself, I'm going to go out there and throw myself to the ground and accidentally fall here and just take a little bit of get a 6-figure check in the mail or something.
Yeah, add to it. Maybe take a little hot coffee to the arm on your way down.
Throw right in my face.
Oh,
But yeah, it
yeah.
was
All right.
I was shocked that major businesses didn't even give a shit.
Yeah, I don't,
Like if I'm Starbucks, I'm thinking to myself like somebody needed to be out there salting that stuff and chopping it up so
100%.
it melts.
If I were a small business owner, and they're not small business, but I always think about this, like with my own sidewalk out front of my house, I'm out there immediately taking care of that because the last thing I want is some asshole coming through, you
Yeah.
know, with slippers on, walking the dog, takes a
That's the same
spill.
thing I've ever heard. Like even my dad was the same way. No one walks on my street. No one's walking past my dad's house on our sidewalk. But the
Yeah,
thing you just knew was like, no, you got to do that. So
got to do
like,
it.
yeah,
You got 12 hours around here. You have 12 hours after
yeah,
it stops snowing.
yeah,
Yep, to make it happen.
yeah.
Yeah, you don't.
Well, they had like 5 days and
Yeah,
it's still there.
it didn't make a difference.
No, it just gets worse and worse because now it can't melt. There's no somebody needs to get out there and start chopping it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I didn't play UFC. Sims Tool had me in position yesterday, though, man. 10th in the
Nice.
play action, but it was the difference was Pacheco and James White. That was
Hmm.
it. Or
Yeah,
James
I didn't
Cook.
play, I didn't play a
James Cook.
single thing all weekend.
Nothing. Okay. Sometimes a
Nothing.
disconnect is good. Yeah.
Yeah, I had no time. No time.
Yeah.
Too
Get
many
some betting
cocktails.
action in too. Well, same game parlay action, some good
I bet the
stuff.
Lions last night. That was it.
Oh yeah, you can bet there. Nice.
You can.
Yeah. It's good stuff. But we got 7 games. You ready to dive into this?
I am.
We got ownership updated. We got projections. We're in business, man. Let's make it happen. And well, we'll kick it off with first game we got going here. Hold on, let me pull this up. I got so shit on this computer. Spurs, Philly. All right, let's go.
You picking up some viruses from some of those AI images I sent you?
I think I closed out of that.
That's a
Spurs,
shame. There's more now, man. They dropped a bunch of other people.
send them over. 14
right.
and a half point dogs, 237 total. Sixers on a bit of a run here. They're also just like carving up bad basketball teams right now. Joel Embiid, you're lucky to get him play. That's been the honest concern with him in a lot of these games is just, can he get to the fourth quarter, Josh?
Yeah. Well, he's going to score 30 regardless, so
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter. That's all. The only thing that he does is score 30 real points.
I mean, at 11-4, it matters. So you'd still like to get 36 minutes from him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, what's weird is though, like you think about it, like if you get 34 minutes out of Joel Embiid, you're like, holy shit, the Spurs kept it close.
For sure. They're 14 and a half point dogs on the road today. So
Yeah, it's not great for the Spurs.
little troublesome. We can talk about the Spurs first on the other side of this game. Only injury news here to speak of is Zach Collins, questionable here. Outside of that, it looks like everybody notable, I should say, should be good to go. Not a lot of ownership coming in here, though. Like Wembanyama at what, 6%?
Yeah.
Vassell's at 10.6%. Jeremy Sohan at 9.7. So a few guys, floating around high single digits, low double digits, around that 10% mark, 64 and 5,700 respectively for those guys. It is a tough spot. I mean, it's against a solid enough defense. They're 2 touchdown dogs on the road today.
Yeah.
Makes things a little bit troublesome. How do you approach the Spurs in this spot?
I barely have them. I've got as a value option, Chetty snuck into some of my lineups. That won't exist when we get to lock. I think Devin Vassell would be a completely reasonable play if this game stays competitive, 6,400. He's like a fantasy point per minute guy, but it's a terrible matchup, and you're seeing it in the ownership. No one's really getting to the Spurs. Like we have Wemby as a pretty positive leverage play, 12% optimal, 6% ownership. You know that he's limited at 26 minutes right now or something in that neighborhood, so you don't feel great about it. But 1.92 DraftKings points per minute for Wemby over the past 30 days. I just barely have this San Antonio team. Philadelphia is 5th in defensive rating. They're 26th in pace. So you're going up against a team that plays slow and is difficult to score on. There are so many better spots today than San Antonio that I find it very hard to point out any one individual dude on the Spurs and say, like, you should focus on that guy for today.
What about focusing on Joel Embiid? I know it's a big spread, but you look over his last 12. I just went back to that. He has 3 different games over his last 12 where he scored 40 points and didn't step on the floor in the fourth quarter. So
it's a shame he's not going to win the MVP.
I mean, he won it last year and they were unceremoniously bounced in the second. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
I know he cares and all that stuff, but I've said it to you a million times. If you're a fan, you should not care about the MVP. It means nothing. Like,
I don't.
yeah.
I'm
saying, like,
happy for like the person that wins it when they deserve it. Like I
oh
bet
yeah,
it feels good.
I know, but I'm saying at this point, like, if they keep getting bounced in the second round, as we've seen every single year, right?
Yeah.
In the conference semi, like, what does it matter? It doesn't, none of that means anything. All I'm saying is he can, like, that's the thing about Joel Embiid is he can go out there in 30 minutes and still give you 65 fantasy. He can still go out there and in 30, 31 minutes, still give you 41 and 10 with a handful of stocks. And the biggest thing about him this year too, is that you've seen the assist rate tick up considerably with James Harden off the floor. It's more than that too. It's just that he's become a better passer. It makes him still viable despite the massive 14.5 point spread.
I've got a ton right now. I'm very happy to be getting to him. I'm really curious to see what happens. If he plays 65 games on the dot, I do not think that he should win the MVP, but I think that he will. I don't even think it should be close.
With the way he's playing right now, and they're dismantling teams, much of it is a result of him just going insane over the first 36 minutes of a game.
Yeah.
If he reaches the games played threshold, I think it'd be hard not to give it to him.
It should be really easy based on the other guys that are also going to play 80 games.
But what if he continues
60?
At this pace?
He'll be behind Nikola Jokic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander because they don't miss games.
No.
Shai's played 41 of 42. Jokic has played 43 of 44. You can't make that gap up.
You can't. The only question I have then is what if he plays, let's say, 66 games?
Yeah.
And then you look at the games that he didn't play, right? So that would be what, 16 games that he didn't play?
Yeah.
And they're like 5 and 11, 4 and 12.
So they're fantastic with Embiid off and Maxey on so far this season.
What's their record? Because
I don't know.
Well, I'm only asking you that because
here's the deal. If he gets
60,
if he gets 65 games, he's going to win the MVP, and none of it matters. I just don't think that he should.
I got you. Either way,
because Shai is exceptional and Jokic is exceptional, and playing an extra 13 games is a lot.
But we can agree that despite the blowout risk today, he is just absolutely carving up bad teams right now. So
yeah,
even at that price point, it's tough. It's tough not to have interest. And then your other high-priced guys, you have Giannis against Detroit. Clear blowout risk there for what it's worth. Cade Cunningham's doubtful.
No difference.
Yeah, not to say it would make a difference, but they're 12-point road favorites. So you put them at home. I mean, it's just, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So Giannis is essentially the same price. And then Luka Doncic at home should be a competitive game, 3.5-point spread. But that's against the Boston Celtics, and that's clearly a talented defense.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of Luka as well, but I'm getting to Embiid. I have 48% to start the day. I have him projected in this game for 1.95 fantasy points per minute. And the funny thing about that is that we have it even more aggressive than that. We have him at 2 on the dot.
Wow.
We also have him as a negative leverage play, scoring 2 fantasy points per minute, which feels really hard to do, but he is. That said, I would like to get to as much Joel Embiid as I can. I don't know what San Antonio does to stop them. They're a terrible defense. He is going to just absolutely break Wemby's chest if he tries to stop him there. They're not going to guard Joel Embiid with Wemby. That's just not going to happen. He's going to be guarding Nick Batum, I would imagine. And you're going to put Sohan probably on Joel Embiid, somebody that can get underneath him a bit, but he's going to nuke this team. He scores 30 points, real points every single game. He should absolutely dominate the boards. It would take to me, honestly, it really would take an injury to Joel Embiid tonight or aggressive foul trouble to stop him from scoring 60 fantasy points at a minimum.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, right. Because there's not really a way to stop what he does. That's the problem.
No.
Well, I'm saying with a bad defense. There's not a way for a bad defense to stop what he does. Hey, by the way, Josh, I don't know if you saw these super chats from Jorge. Our boy Jorge.
I did not.
Well, first of all, he just gifted 50 stochastic memberships to the YouTube channel
I
because he's
like
the
it.
man.
I like
And a
it.
$50 super chat, just appreciating the tools in your shows. Turned $60 into 6.6K in the 20 max NFL tournament yesterday. Thanks to you and your amazing tools. Chat, stop guessing and start winning. Subscribe to the amazing tool. Dude, you're the man, Jorge. We appreciate you and congratulations. Love seeing that stuff, man.
It's awesome. Love it.
Yeah,
Makes me happy.
100%. I got the tweet right here too. Yeah, $60 into $6,600. Yo, that was a sick lineup too, by the way, man. I had the same lineup outside of, I think it was Josh Reynolds. I had Jamison Williams over Reynolds. But man, good stuff, brother. Love to see it. And as always, guys, all the tools, the Sims tools, the lineup generator, if you're looking to get in at a better price, all that stuff in the description and in chat. So if you wanted to check out the NBA Sims tool, the great thing about that is you don't only get it on like Sunday, Monday, Thursday. It's every single day of the week. So if you wanted to check a week out of the Sims tool, usually a good time to do so. Peter Hanley, by the way, Josh, Peter Hanley,
I saw
big
that one.
supporter of the show, big supporter of the tools, took down 50K yesterday. And that, my friend, was in the NBA streets. So we had a big one. We had a big one in NFL, big one in NBA, first place, P Hanley 214, 50K. You guys ever want to check those tools out? Like I said, link in the description and chat. You have questions, hit me up, hit any of us up. We're happy to help you. Greg did great tutorials with Steve Buzzard, who was winning the Millie last night until like the last couple of minutes. But yeah, all that stuff's down there. We'd love to have you guys join the team. Plus, it's not just the Sims tool. It's the ownership projections, player projections, boom bust tool, premium Discord lineup generator, everything on top of that.
By the way, plus 7.2 in 670 minutes. Embiid off, Maxey on.
Okay. All right. But I mean, yeah, there's still just not over time that does not sustain.
Well, over time, I don't know about that.
There's no way.
They're 3-6
Tobias has
in
been
games
good.
where Embiid didn't play.
What's that?
They're 3-6 in games that Embiid didn't play and Maxey did play.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know who else in that that could be games where like more people could also be out in those.
It could have been, but also Maxey has struggled big time efficiency wise with Joel Embiid off the floor.
Is that true?
It feels like it. It sure feels like it, dude. It sure feels like it.
Do we want the answer?
Yeah, of course.
In 669 minutes with Maxey on and Joel Embiid off, 57.5% true shooting.
I would like the games that Joel Embiid did not play.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. So the 9 games that Joel Embiid has missed.
Okay. Let's see. Games where Maxey started and Joel Embiid did not play. 9 games, 352 minutes, 51% true shooting.
Yeah,
Dave Loughran all over it.
Yeah, he's definitely struggled efficiency wise in that sense.
Yeah, he's shooting 26.5% from 3.
Yeah, it's tough when you don't have Embiid to take that attention away, dude. Anyway, what are you doing with the rest of Philly? I mean, like you said, Embiid obviously strong. Tobias Harris, what a renaissance you've seen from him. God, I love Nick Nurse. He's unlocked some of these guys.
Yeah, it's incredible what happens when your coach isn't Brett Brown or
Doc Rivers.
Like Doc's fine, but you're getting Doc's a different kind of coach.
Yeah.
You're getting the tactician and Nick Nurse. I like Maxey here, 8,800 point guard only. I mean, someone for Philly is going to carve up the San Antonio team. I'm starting with Embiid. I don't mind the second most exposed guy that I have being Maxey. 1.14 fantasy points per minute over the past 30 days. Because of this massive pace up spot for Philadelphia, you have to look at that rate as low for the day. So I actually have Maxey at 1.25. Somewhere around 27 real points. He's just going to stack up the stats. We only have him 5% to be optimal, 7% owned. I like him in GPPs. That's the kind of guy that I want to get to. Only other guy that I have from Philly with any volume is the guy that's also getting ownership. That's Tobias Harris, 6,900 small forward, power forward. I'm right around the field there. But if you're going to the Philly dudes, you're going to those 3 main guys.
Appreciate you, El Negro Loco. So just a little super chat. Say shout out to Josh and Laffy. All right.
Shout out to us. I agree.
How about Milwaukee and Detroit here? Another game. By the way, there are
Ooh.
several games with huge spreads.
Yes,
This
there
one,
are.
12 points. Charlotte, Minnesota. The Hornets are 14.5 point dogs. So, yeah, couple tough spots for sure. Now, we'll talk about Milwaukee, though, and then we can move over to the Pistons side of this one. But the Bucks, as huge favorites on the road right now, are getting very little ownership outside of Giannis. I mean, it's Giannis and then falls off a cliff, right?
Yeah,
15%. Nobody else in our ownership projections. I want to pull the boom bust tool up as well, just to see what some of these optimal scores look like in our tools. But
sure.
nobody else above 3% in Milwaukee right now.
It's pretty rough, and I'm not getting to Giannis either. I find it pretty difficult to do so. I prefer Luka today to Giannis. Not that I don't like Giannis, obviously. Like if you want to make a lineup with Giannis, please go ahead and do that. He should be fine here against Detroit. I did take his under on Prize Picks today, by the way. Just putting that out there. But I would rather have Luka, and I would definitely
under what? PRA or points?
PRA 51.5. So he can go 30, 10, and 10 and not get it. And I certainly prefer Joel Embiid. They're not on the same sort of level in terms of per minute performance right now. So as I look at it, if you want to go to someone, the first guy you're trying to put into a lineup from Milwaukee is going to be Giannis for sure. He's 12% optimal, 15% owned, but it's minimal single digits to everybody else. No higher than 4% ownership to Middleton, no higher than 5% optimal odds to Middleton. I don't really have anybody that I would advocate for. Brook Lopez is like a little sneaky if you want to get away from Jalen Duren on the opposite side of this one, who is pulling a little bit more ownership. We've got Duren projected for 23% ownership. These guys are basically the same price. I don't think that Jalen Duren is 23-3 to beat Brook Lopez today. So I like the idea of just pivoting a Duren lineup to a Lopez lineup, but that's not making Brook Lopez a priority. Nothing on Milwaukee is really a priority.
The other side, despite being huge dogs, despite being a god-awful basketball team, there's a little bit going on here. A little bit going on. You mentioned some of the ownership up top. Jalen Duren getting 23%, Ivy getting 23%, Thompson at 15, Burks 13, Bojan Bogdanovic at 11. So you can't just gloss over Detroit today.
No.
Cade Cunningham's doubtful. And then Isaiah Stewart, so sprained his ankle, Wednesday?
Yeah.
And we haven't seen him since. So do you have Stewart out?
I have him in.
You have him in. Okay.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
This is a weird team today. Because there are things that I like and there are things that I don't like, but some of those things, like Jalen Duren's getting 23% ownership right now. We have him as a massive negative leverage play, which makes sense to me. It's part of the reason that I wanted to pitch that Brook Lopez piece. We have him 14% optimal, 23% owned.
Wow.
It's a 7-game slate. We know we have a never-ending supply of centers on these slates. Not that Jalen Duren isn't talented. We're talking about a 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy here. That, like, the rates are great, but he's getting too much love for this spot today. Whereas, like, if Beef Stew plays power forward center 5,300, I'll take my chances on him at 2% owned if that's going to be the case. Like, I would just flip flop. I'd be fine flip flopping their ownership. 0.98 fantasy points per minute for Stewart over the past 30 days. I completely agree with the Jaden Ivey ownership, although we have him as a massive negative leverage play. 9% optimal, 23% owned. I like him a little bit more. I'm just a bit under the field, but this is like our last chance to really roster him. Once Cade gets back, he's going to be overpriced for a couple games. I think Alec Burks is at least mildly interesting. Shooting guard, small forward, 5,400. Always has the ability to close in a game that's close. He's been playing much better as of late. We're showing Asar Thompson as a hugely positive leveraged option. I'm not getting there as much, but at 4,600, I like the price tag. Certainly has some minutes upside. This is the difference between myself and us. We have Asar Thompson in for 26 minutes. I only gave Asar Thompson 21 minutes. That's causing me to not get nearly as much. He played 32 minutes last time out, but again, that is without Isaiah Stewart. When Stewart is in, I don't think we're getting those kinds of minutes for Asar Thompson. We saw 22, 27, and 18 in the 3 previous games that Isaiah Stewart was back. So if Stewart's playing, I think our projection on Asar Thompson comes down and stabilizes a little bit closer to that 15% ownership mark.
Man, it sucks Cade went down when he did. I mean, he'll come back, he'll be fine, but he was on he was on a tear before he went down, man. I mean, 1.33 DraftKings points per minute over the last 10 games he had played before that injury. You were seeing some just monumental performances from, despite losing like every one of those games, didn't matter. Going out there playing like 38, 40 minutes a night. And, you know, I mean, look, consider this for a second. I have to ask, I know it's not pertinent to this slate.
Okay.
But do you see what his price point is?
Cade?
Yeah, he's $7,800. I mean, if he's sitting at $7,800 when he returns, presumably, let's say next game.
I assume he's on a mild minutes restriction. Because it is lower body. And they're gonna be
it is a knee, yeah, you're right.
They're not gonna care as much.
You're right. And it's not like they have any reason to run him out there for 40.
Right. But yeah, I mean, that's too low.
Yeah. He was killing. Anyway, you mentioned it. 2 of our 7 most negatively leveraged plays in the boom bust tool are actually from this Detroit team today. It's Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren.
I like the Ivy play a lot more than I like the Duren play.
Yeah. What about this next one we've got? So you're talking about a Cleveland team that's still
just skip it.
Still dealing with injuries, right? Garland's out still, Mobley's out, LeVert's questionable. They're 1.5 point favorites in a game that has a 216 total. Mind you, 237 with the Philly Spurs game, Detroit, Milwaukee, 247, just across the board outside of Charlotte, Minnesota, a lot of pretty high total. 216 we're sitting at here. And now you've got a Cleveland team that's been dealing with these injuries. So you're not even getting any significant value from the pricing perspective there. Like, oh, okay, can't bump the prices up when these guys first go. No, they've been out. So, I mean, at this stage, maybe Karis LeVert's potential absence could make a difference. I would expect him to play because it was, I think, wrist soreness.
Yeah.
So,
hey, look, he's questionable, so we have him in. And that's real. Like it's awful. It's awful across the board here. I mean, 215 total or whatever is what I had earlier, but somewhere in that neighborhood. You have 216. Is that what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean,
might as well be the same
depending
number.
on the book, it might be different. Yeah.
Might as well be the same number. This is the number 18 team in offense, so below average. The number 24 team in offense, well below average. So neither team is good offensively. Number 4 in defense against number 3 in defense. So very difficult matchup for those bad offenses. And 25th in pace against 27th in pace. This is a slow defensive-minded matchup with a 215 total. I barely have anything here. It's single-digit ownership across the board to Cleveland. Donovan Mitchell sneaks into 10% on FanDuel. If you want to take shots on Donovan Mitchell or even like a 6K Karis LeVert if he's in, I guess like Jared Allen at 7,800, that just seems too expensive for today. I am very anti-Cleveland in this spot.
I don't blame you.
Yes.
There's not a ton there. I mean, 2 teams that play at bottom 10 pace as well. I mean, it's ugly. Now, what about Orlando? We were dealing with some injuries there like last week, and sure, we'll see it. We'll see how this shapes up today. I think it's what Cole Anthony and Gary Harris are questionable. So, okay, but like
we have no idea who's available today. They're on a back-to-back.
I'm labeling them as questionable because one of them has been out and the other one tweaked his ankle yesterday. So I'm just considering it questionable.
Sure. Yeah. We should expect no Gary Harris.
Right. And I'm pretty sure he tweaked his ankle and said he was okay. So just throwing him in there because you never know. Second of a back-to-back, you could tweak those ankles and you're like, no, I'm fine after the game. And then you wake up the next morning and you're like, maybe I'm not fine.
Right. This game's a disaster, dude.
What's that?
This is a disaster for Orlando. People are going to want to burn this slate down because of this team today.
Why?
So Wendell Carter Jr. has been a thorn in my side basically since he came back. But yesterday, they got weird. And Wendell Carter Jr. got the start, played 34 minutes, didn't close the blowout, so could have played more in theory. And then Mo Wagner was the backup center. Goga Bitadze got a straight up DNP CD yesterday after not exactly being in that role for the past, I don't know, whole season. Like, Wendell Carter Jr. has been out for a pretty long time. He came back. They continued to go to Goga for a while. And yet, like, I mean, he had started the previous 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 games, DNP CD. So we don't know what Orlando is going to do today. I don't know how to project Wendell Carter Jr.'s minutes, but if he's playing 30 minutes tonight at 5,400 and he's 11% owned, he's probably the best play on today's slate relative to his current ownership. He could also just play 24 minutes and they could play Goga again, and we have no idea what they really do. So this is a very scary spot in that Orlando can bring Goga. And let's be clear, Goga has been great this year. He's a positive offensive EPM. He's like a plus 0.25 defensively. There's a reason Orlando is third in defense, and Goga has a lot to do with it. We have no clue confidently how many minutes Wendell Carter Jr. is going to play and if Goga is going to be in the rotation again. If Goga is not in the rotation, then 30 minutes for Wendell Carter Jr. feels great, and he's the best center play on today's slate on a point per dollar basis. But that could all just change, and he could play 22 minutes, and you hate yourself. So enjoy this one, everybody, for trying to get to Wendell Carter Jr.
So, I mean, at this point then, okay. So let's say we get starting lineups. This is a 7 p.m. game, by the way. There's 3 of them. Then there's a 7:30 and 8, and 8:30 and 9. The 10 o'clock game is chopped from DraftKings and FanDuel. How do you approach it then?
I gave him 30 minutes.
Strategy show. I know it's still early, but how do you approach something like this?
I gave him 30 minutes. We gave him 30 minutes. He's like twice his ownership for leverage score. I have 30% at 11% owned. Like, I am going to make the assumption that if Wendell Carter Jr. is the starting center for Orlando today, that I will have a lot of him.
Yeah. I guess it has to be that simple.
Yeah. And I like Suggs today a lot at 5,300 as well. I would not be surprised at all if Markelle Fultz isn't playing today. We do not have him projected in. This is the second half of a back-to-back. I'm guessing they're going to baby him considering he's been out for a while. They don't have to, so we don't know that yet, but it's a 7 o'clock game, so we're going to get this information one way or the other. Doesn't matter if we're right or wrong in the morning, but assuming he's out, Suggs is not priced correctly for that to be the case. He's like a 0.9 guy, but you can take him from 28 minutes to 30 minutes pretty quickly and feel pretty good about it. So I like getting to Suggs at very minimal ownership.
This Memphis team, man, the injuries that they have suffered throughout the season.
I mean, like, it's basically their entire real rotation.
It's great.
Except for Triple J.
Yeah, if you're including Steven Adams in that, which you have to, assuming he was healthy. Adams, Morant, Smart, Bane. Now it's just Jaren Jackson Jr. He's the lone man left.
Yeah. He's probably looking around the locker room like, who the fuck are these people?
It's nuts, dude. It's, and, you know, people are going to get burned on the value here. Sometimes it's going to work. Other times it isn't, but you're looking at them. They're 7-point dogs against a Toronto team that has traded away some key players on their team. So it's not like, you know, this is the Toronto team of the past, but still favored 7 points at home, 226.5 point total. Xavier Tillman, by the way, questionable for this game. We currently have him with 42% ownership. Now, if you look at that in context to the rest of the slate, and we'll get into Luke Kennard and Conchar and those guys and Jaren Jackson in a second, but he is currently the highest projected owned player on the slate. Not only that, he's the highest owned projected player on the slate by a considerable margin today.
Yeah. So I have 6%.
Okay.
It's not that I don't like him at 5,300, but like basically the exact same thing I just got done saying about Wendell Carter Jr. is in play here. If Xavier Tillman is 5,300 and 42% owned. And Wendell Carter Jr. is 5,400 and 11% owned. Let's be very clear here. Wendell Carter Jr. is the better per minute fantasy performer comparing these two guys. They're the exact same price, but one of them is 4 times his owned. I'm running away from Tillman. Not that he's not a great play, because he is. On a point per dollar basis, I got him for 28.5 fantasy points at 30 minutes. That looks really good to me. We're even more optimistic than that. We only have him as a slightly negative leverage play. You're probably looking at him very quickly in cash games. He looks good, and the opportunities are there. One, he also still has to play today. He is questionable, so we do need that information. But two, there's so many centers that look completely reasonable that aren't getting real ownership that can work as large field pivots. I expect to have less of Tillman if he's this owned. I also don't expect him to be 42% owned by the time we get to lock. I think we find a little bit more value. We stabilize a little bit more with that Wendell Carter Jr. ownership. Like if Tillman comes in at 30 and then you've got Wendell Carter Jr. at 20, I think that all makes a lot more sense in the whole of this slate. He looks really good, but I don't want it if he's going to be in 42% of lineups.
So the starting lineup last game without Tillman, right? He only missed one, right? I think he only missed one game.
Yes.
Yeah. Last game, the starting lineup was Kennard, Vince Williams Jr., Aldama, Conchar, and Jaren Jackson Jr.
Yeah.
And we saw that one against the Bulls. What? 30 minutes for Kennard, 30 minutes for Williams, 28 for Aldama, 27 for fucking Siri, dude. She just started talking to me about the Memphis Grizzlies starting lineup.
Women, right?
Jaren Jackson played 33 minutes, but that game was a blowout, right? And they had five guys in straight mop-up duty. Some of them who played like 3 of them played 7.5 minutes straight. The other two, we don't even name names, but like other two played 5 minutes to close this game out. So you're looking at 3.5 quarters worth of play for these guys. What if Tillman ends up not playing today?
Well, you're going to get to Jaren Jackson Jr. the same way you should want to, just because he's going to have like 30% usage and be the only functional basketball player out on the floor. $7,900 power forward center. That's just going to work for today. And you're casting a wide net. Like we're seeing a ton of ownership coming into these guys. 25% to Conchar. I think that's totally justified. I have a bunch of him. Luke Kennard is 25% owned at 5,400. Like he's going to play around 30 minutes. He looks pretty good in terms of ownership. Aldama's totally fine at 5K and will certainly look better if Tillman ends up out. Vince Williams, we only have him projected for 7% ownership. I'm well over that number, $6,200 small forward only. But if you're looking at him, he's probably the odds-on favorite to play the most minutes for the Grizzlies today. So you can't just run away from that option either. You kind of just want to get to a lot of the starting lineup for the Memphis Grizzlies, whoever that really is.
It feels gross because they're just like this feels like a March team.
Yes.
March, early April type basketball team.
Yeah. It's really bleak, but at the same time, you can't really avoid it.
Right. What's the recourse? There isn't one. I mean, especially if Tillman sits, then even if Tillman's in, you're going to have a lot of ownership going to Memphis. If Tillman
we're seeing it right now. If Tillman's in, he's the most owned guy from Memphis.
Right. And then if he sits, what do you think ownership looks like on this team if Tillman's out again today and just joins a laundry list of Memphis Grizzlies on the sidelines?
I think his 42 just gets redistributed. Like you start getting to David Roddy a bit, you bump up Jackson a bit, you bump up Santi Aldama's ownership a bit. You probably have a little bit more ownership coming into Zaire Williams, more than the 0 that he's currently getting. They just don't have enough dudes. So the ownership won't go away, and all the other guys that are already getting it are just going to get more.
I hear you. Would Aldama not look, really good though at 5K? He's coming off a 20-year I'm asking you this question genuinely, right?
Yeah.
If he's coming off a 28-minute game where he didn't play the final 5 minutes in a blowout, he's a fantasy point per minute guy this year, and Tillman would be off the floor. They'd be down yet another big.
Yeah, he's going to look fantastic. We have him as like a 25% positive leverage play, which obviously none of that is real. Like he's either way more owned or we're too high on him. But like there's that it can't exist the way that it does in NBA DFS. But yeah, if we're assuming 26 minutes, like I'm not assuming 26 minutes right now. I have significantly less than that. I have 20 because I don't think he starts if Tillman is in.
I was saying if Tillman didn't play because we
Yeah,
got
if
big
Tillman's
minutes
not going to
from
play,
Aldama.
yeah, you're projecting Aldama for 27 minutes, and he's a amazing play at that point. We're talking about, point nine, we'll call it 0.95 fantasy points per minute in 27 minutes, 25 and a half fantasy points at 5K, 5X. You're getting 15, 20, 30% of Aldama at that point.
How about this Toronto side? Like clearly, I don't think you and I have done a show yet together, a strategy show, since the Siakam news. We have, but
Yeah.
not with Toronto on the slate.
Yeah.
OG Anunoby got shipped off earlier. This team, just the identity of this team is so much different than it was before. Obviously Van Vliet too, but what do we look at now when it comes to Toronto, given that a lot of these price points are starting to find their equilibrium, right? Because you still have Barnes. Emmanuel quickly is now in a spot where he gets to play consistent minutes and isn't at the mercy of, the flow of the game or whether or not he misses his first 5 shots.
Yeah.
RJ Barrett being another guy like that. Gary Trent Jr. at 4,400. Understandably, there's still mouths to feed here. And I'm not sure there's one guy that's just going to soak up 35% usage every single day.
Yeah.
But it's a good matchup against the completely injury-riddled Memphis team where they're 7-point home favorites.
Yeah, I think you have to have a bunch of Toronto here, and you're happy with most of it. Scotty Barnes is pulling the most ownership. I have nothing to say or add there. 8,200 guard forward eligibility, completely justified 25% ownership. RJ Barrett, 6,900 shooting guard, small forward. So again, guard forward eligibility, pulling 20% ownership, completely justified to me. We're talking about a 1.05 fantasy point per minute guy for Barrett over the past 30 days, 1.25 for Scotty Barnes. I like the idea of getting to quickly. He's 17% owned. He's a guy that I'm getting a bit of a stand on. He's a fantasy point per minute guy playing, 30 plus minutes pretty easily every night. Gary Trent is sitting there as a value option, shooting guard only, but 4,400. He's 22% owned. Now we have him as a pretty sizable negative leverage play, but certainly a guy that you can still get to. You're not surprised to see that ownership coming in. And then you can take your shots on Dennis Schroeder if you want to. Jonte Porter at 4,200 at center. You want to roll the dice on a $5,100 Bruce Brown. At some point in time, you wouldn't be surprised if he falls into a couple extra minutes. I got him at 24. We have him at 26. Certainly a viable option going up against this Memphis team. Chris Boucher doesn't seem like he's going to be getting enough minutes to matter, but he's 3,400 power forward center. We're going to talk about worse guys getting some love with crappy price tags. To be able to go up against this Memphis team with very little in terms of real NBA players, you're seeing the ownership come in with basically 4 dudes at 20% and then scattered around 10 for a couple more. Toronto's a bit of a priority today. The problem is that not one specific dude is the guy you got to really go to. You're pretty happy grabbing anybody.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what I was getting at. You lose Anunoby, you lose Siakam, you bring in quickly, you bring in Barrett, you still have Barnes, all of these guys. Obviously, Jakob Poeltl still being out, but it does feel like one of those games, Josh, where you'd be happy to have just kind of a good amount of all of them because there's no clear cut. This is the guy you want the most of. This is the guy you want the second most of.
Yeah, I've got 5 guys in 10% or more of my lineups from Toronto. I'm more than okay with that. My biggest stands are Trent and Quickly, but if my biggest stands were Barrett and Barnes, I wouldn't mind at all because they look good too. Although I did take the under on RJ Barrett today on my Prize Picks video, and we are building off of a dub this past Thursday. So the last time I talked about it, it went well.
Very nice. I mean, it's got to be the most popular game of the slate in total. Has to be.
I would imagine.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. We have
it is. It is. There's only 3 teams that are over 100% aggregate ownership, and Toronto and Memphis are both 2 of them.
Yeah, makes sense. Is Minnesota the other one?
They are. You know who isn't? Their opponent.
I mean, brutal matchup. Number one.
Yes.
A bunch of injury. We'll get into all that. Talking about Prize Picks, by the way. if you see in the top right side of the screen, for those of you in legal betting states like myself, Josh, BetMGM, they'll pull this out and like we'll find out one morning it's gone. This is what happens. But
Yeah.
bet 5, get $158 in bonus bets. 58's kind of a play on Super Bowl 58. Bet 5, get $158 in bonus bets. So I did my picks for every game video on Wednesday, right? For NFL, for the divisional round weekend. Some great games, by the way. And I said, I don't do this often. I'm going to throw a same game parlay out there, right? We got plus 580 odds on Caesars, plus 580, which, by the way, we got there. Turned the 100 into 680. And we were pretty happy with that. But I wanted to I wanted to illustrate something. So here's what I did. I went and in the video showed everybody what happens if you're just betting on one sports book. So I pulled up Caesars last. I'll go in reverse order here, but it was plus 5.8, right? Which the break-even percentage on that was 15%, which means over time you'd need to win that bet 15% of the time just to break even, right? You think it's a bet though that wins more than 15% of the time? That's a nice bet. FanDuel was plus 5, or DraftKings was plus 550, not bad. BetMGM was plus 400, not great. But again, any different bet, the books could be different, right? Like it could be great on BetMGM, great on FanDuel was plus 369. So let's say you're just on one book and you go, well, I only bet my parlays here. You bet 100 to win 369, Josh, or you bet 100 to win 580. The break even at 369 is over 21%. So let's just say, so you bet that, you make that same bet 100 times, okay, a $100 bet. On on Caesars, had you done that, you win 20% of the time, you're profiting $3,600. If you made that same bet on FanDuel and profited the same 20% of the time, you're down $620. Like the importance, it's nuts. The importance of line shopping and odd shopping is so insane. And when a book is giving you $158 in bonus bets just to bet $5, like that, even if you lose, it doesn't matter. You make a 12-leg parlay, who gives a shit? Because at the end of the day, you could lose it. You're only down $5. The importance of that cannot be overstated. It just can't.
It's so good. I hate that I can't take advantage of this one yet. Like I'm so close. Yeah. March Madness, evidently. Like I hope there's great deals when that pops up. But I wish that I could be grabbing this one.
But yeah, if you're on DraftKings, FanDuel, whatever, add additional books to your repertoire. And in this case, you're getting $158 in bonus bets just to sign up. Click the link in the description or in chat. Bet $5 on whatever. You only have to deposit $5 on whatever it is you want. Get $158 in bonus bets. It's as good as it gets. You got to be 21 years or older to gamble. If you have a gambling problem, go ahead. Call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. I hope you don't. But check it out. Collect, baby. Collect and build that bankroll. And make sure you're shopping the odds. Let's talk about Charlotte and Minnesota.
Yeah, let's talk about Minnesota.
Let's talk. Well, Charlotte's still without Gordon Hayward, still without Mark Williams. LaMelo and Nick Richards are questionable, though. So,
yeah.
I mean, look, they're 14.5-point dogs. This is, I have to ask you about Charlotte. I know that it's ugly, but what if both of them end up being out and now you just have like an even more skeleton crew team where, then they're even more than 14.5-point favorites, but players still have to play. It's different than like a backup wide receiver coming in for a stud wide receiver. In this case, you still have to get 48 minutes at each position. You still have to shoot the basket. You still have to get rebound. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, there's still minutes there. So as gross as it sounds, we got to talk about it.
Okay. So obviously we as a site have these guys projected in. So do I. They all look awful. You should not want to roster anybody from Charlotte today if these guys end up in, full stop. Now, if they don't end up in, like if LaMelo's out, $7,700 shooting guard Terry Rozier is going to go from uninteresting to interesting pretty quickly. It's just a massive usage jump, massive assist rate bump. He's just on a different level if LaMelo's not going to be in for this game. Similarly, if Nick Richards happens to be out, then you start looking at PJ Washington starting at the 5. You have JT Thor could sneak into like a value discussion. Nathan Mensah is flat 3K center eligible. You start looking at him in like a value discussion as a backup center. The only guy that I'd be like really excited to get to is going to be Terry Rozier if LaMelo Ball is out. But you do create some value if you get Richards out. Let's just hope that doesn't happen.
So you'd almost just prefer these guys are in.
I would like them to both be in so that I don't have to roster the Hornets in a matchup against the number one defense. This is the number 27 ranked offense against the number one defense, and both of them are in the bottom 10 in pace.
Yep. Yeah, Minnesota 24th. Charlotte, it's so gross. We currently don't have a single player with more than 1% projected ownership. And that's,
Miles Bridges at 4% on FanDuel is the high across both sites.
Yeah, it's gross. I think you're right. Let's just hope these guys play.
Yes,
because
it's just easier.
You'll get funneled to some Terry Rozier if
if they're going to be out, I hope they're out like in an hour, because I don't want to have to swap to shitty Charlotte dudes at 7:40 today.
Yep, and you know that like if you're using our late swap tool in the Sims, it's going to be positive ROI lineups. Taking negative, you're not going to be swapping out Charlotte players for more Charlotte players.
No, you're going to be swapping into
Charlotte
dudes
from non-Charlotte players. But I guarantee if you ran the late swap tool, right, after like, let's say Richards and LaMelo Ball are out, as gross as the matchup is, just the usage and the minutes is going to make a difference. So let's hope it doesn't.
It's not great.
Minnesota's popular.
They are, and they should be.
Mike Conley, cheap. Kyle Anderson, cheap. Edwards, though, 21% here. I mean, honestly, look, you can't just project everything for a blowout. It doesn't work that way.
Nope.
However, pretty good chance this game does not stay competitive.
Yeah, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys projected for 10% ownership or more. One of those guys isn't Jaden McDaniels, who plays, 31, 32 minutes. Not a great per minute dude, but plays starter minutes at small forward and is 4,700. So I like him in GPPs at like minimal ownership. But whatever you want to get here from Minnesota, $7,700 power forward center Karl Anthony Towns looks exceptional. Certainly if you want to like play him with Jaren Jackson if you want, but if you want a Jaren Jackson pivot, that's right there for you. I love Anthony Edwards. They are my two favorite dudes here, but you've got like Nickeil Alexander-Walker getting some love as a shooting guard, small forward value option. You've got Naz Reid potentially playing his way into extra minutes if they're kicking the shit out of Charlotte, or just playing his normal minutes and being a really good per minute dude. He's in double digits. 5,400 for Conley. Now, he's wildly over-owned at 30%. He's also not going to be 30% owned. We have him 13% optimal, 30% ownership. Those numbers will converge by later today. Doesn't make him any less of a good play. Similar story for like Slow-Mo plays like 19, 20 minutes a night now. He's 22% owned at 3,700. It's incredible what happens when you play a team like Charlotte, when it's just like, you know what? You can roster everybody we play today. And that's what's happening. If I can only get one dude from Minnesota, though, it's Karl Anthony Towns.
Basketball is a funny sport like that, though, because just a couple days ago, I was getting like 3-4 Hornets in every lineup against the Spurs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just the way it goes. Favorite way to play this game, though, outside of not getting to Charlotte, priorities from Minnesota. Like you said, they're of the 3 highest owned teams right now. It's Minnesota, it's Toronto, and it's Memphis, 2 of which are playing against each other.
Now that I'm looking through it, like part of me sort of wants Terry Rozier to be able to play without LaMelo, and like that way when I have 3 Minnesota dudes in a lineup, I could have Rozier on the opposite side.
Run back.
Yeah, but boy, oh boy, is he going to catch a hell of a beating in terms of like a never-ending supply of good defenders and then meeting Gobert at the rim. Like it's a tough sell.
Although it's worth pointing out, though, right? Like people ask us all the time, like, oh, what about stacking in basketball and correlation and all that stuff? And generally speaking, it's not something you take into consideration. But you could make the argument that when it's a 14.5-point spread, and then if LaMelo's out, you're probably looking at like 16. Might not even make a difference, but let's just say, 15, 16 points here. That if you are running 3 Minnesota players and you're looking to get their full allotment of minutes, you might need somebody on the other side of that game to do enough to keep it remotely competitive.
for sure. The problem for this matchup is that this is a reverse blowout. Minnesota can score 95 points tonight, and they can beat the shit out of them and beat them by 30.
Yep.
Minnesota doesn't have to be good offensively to blow out Charlotte today. And that's where it gets, especially if LaMelo is out, that's where it gets tricky. If Charlotte just can't do anything, you don't really need a top tier Minnesota day.
It's a great point. And just a bigger problem.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, like, I'm not trying to talk people off of Minnesota. That is not what's happening here. I have a ton of them. I don't anticipate that changing in any way. I've got 182% in the aggregate. They're projected for 134. So I'm over the field on Minnesota, but they don't have to be good to kick the shit out of Charlotte offensively.
That's a problem. Almost at 100 likes, by the way. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us on a Monday morning. Almost 500 people with us this morning. It's good stuff, man. We're making decent time. We got a bit of a late start today, but we're doing okay. Boston and Dallas. You ready to get into this one a little bit?
Yeah, it's a weird one. Boston, just like Charlotte.
It's what, as far as ownership goes, you're talking about?
Yeah, slightly different teams overall, though.
Yeah, a little bit different. Are they also pulling very little ownership on FanDuel? Because on DraftKings, there's nothing.
6% to Tatum and Porzingis are the high marks on the FanDuel side.
Okay. You know, where is Tatum in the boom bust tool? Where is he as far as leverage goes?
5% optimal, 4% ownership.
Okay, so slight positive leverage here.
Yeah.
Just
it's hard. Like, this is a back-to-back. Drew didn't play yesterday. Al Horford didn't play yesterday. We're assuming Horford is in for this one. We assume Drew is in for this one. If somebody's out, then we can start talking about getting to Boston. But for now, it's the same as it always is. Like, pick a dude out of the starting lineup. If you want to play them, you're fine. White, Brown, Tatum, Holiday, Porzingis. That's the last guy you're putting into your lineup. Feel great about it. You cannot prioritize anything from Boston. These guys are all just priced exactly where they should be.
Yeah, it's a problem. And just so many other good spots for some of these top tier options.
Yep.
Do you think it's possible though that Holiday and Horford return and then they look to rest one of the big guns on the second half of the back-to-back?
It's not crazy if someone sits.
We've seen them do it before this season.
Yeah, it's an interesting matchup. So it feels like they'd be at full strength for Dallas. If they were playing. So. If this was Detroit and not Dallas, then you feel a lot better about giving one of these guys the night off. But yeah, look, we lose one of those 5 starters, everybody looks incrementally better. If everybody's in, you are not likely to have much Boston, even though I don't mind it with a 240 total. Really nice implied total, really nice everything. They're just priced correctly.
Yeah, and when you're priced correctly, it's a lot more difficult to get there when other guys aren't. Dallas side though, Luka getting around 6%. So this game in general is pretty underwhelming just from a DFS perspective. So, and also you're still talking about a Boston Celtics team that the only team with a better defensive rating on the season is the Minnesota Timberwolves, who we just talked about. One of the reasons Charlotte's getting such little ownership here. Celtics aren't exactly a super fast paced team either, right? They're middle
22nd.
Yeah, they're middle. Okay, 22nd. I guess it depends on where you're looking. I have them 17th, but it's neck and neck with like 10 other teams down there. Yeah, man, there's not a ton that stands out. Dallas plays at a pretty slow pace as well. Actually, that's not true. They're about top 10 in pace. But
I got them 8th.
You have them at 8th? Yeah, I have them 10. Either way, it's not the best matchup for this Dallas team.
It's not, but I don't know what's causing this to happen, but I am getting Dallas.
Yeah?
I am getting
who from Dallas? Luka?
The ones, most of what you want. So I've got a pretty sizable stand on a 9K Kyrie right now. Point guard, shooting guard eligible. I only have him at 1.3 fantasy points per minute in this spot. He's been at 1.47 over the past 30 days. Now that's a lot of no Luka around, but still the minutes are there. He certainly is going to get up for a Boston matchup. I mean, this is if Kyrie is going to care about anything. Like Boston's probably one of them on the list where he'd like to give him the biz. So I feel a little bit better about it. But I am getting to a essentially unowned Kyrie Irving. Now, we have him 4% optimal, 3% owned. It's not any sort of magic play, but I like him in GPPs. I'm still getting to Luka. 11-2, point guard only, 6% owned. We have him with 9% optimal. As I mentioned before, I'm not really getting to Giannis. I tend to prefer Luka in this spot. And that seems to be working out for me here. 1.85 fantasy points for Luka Doncic over the past 30 days. I got him at 1.69. Nice in this spot. The other guy that I'm actually getting to, though, I don't love this. I went a little bit heavier on the minutes, and I think that's what's causing this. We only went 15 to Maxi Kleba. I went 18. Power forward center, only 3,300. Not the best per minute dude in the world, but we've mentioned a couple other guys that are pretty low price that are creating a little bit of value so far this morning. We don't have like any true pay down options that have showed up yet. So I am getting to a little bit of Maxi at no ownership as like the kind of value play to pivot off of. Like Nickeil Alexander-Walker is 10% owned. Maxi Kleba is unowned. Like instead of the Nickeil Alexander-Walker piece, I'll just get a little bit more of Maxi. Or even like Kyle Anderson, 22% owned, 3,700. I don't think that him and Maxi are all that different of options for today. So I'm getting a little bit of Maxi Kleba. So I see him as like a really nice current value pivot. But if I'm getting to anything, it's Kyrie and it's Luka.
Okay. Let's wrap this one up. Chicago and Phoenix. No Zach LaVine again. Dude, why Patrick Williams? 23% ownership. I mean, look, I understand it to some extent, but you're talking about what, like a 0.75 fantasy point per minute guy on the season.
0.67 over the past 30 days, so even worse.
There you go. Phoenix Suns. You want to talk about a team that plays at a slow pace?
Yeah.
Chicago plays at the slowest pace in the league on the season.
Very slow.
Phoenix is 25th. I don't know where you have them. I guarantee it's, bottom.
They're both in the bottom.
Bottom. Yeah. It's not like Phoenix has been stellar defensively, but
no.
Hey, Patrick Williams, you need, I don't know, man, $4,600. I get it. Small forward, power forward eligible, but we have him at 23% right now for a guy that's a 0.75, like you said, 0.7 over the last month, fantasy point per minute guy against the bottom 5 pace team in the league on the road.
Yeah, giant negative leverage play for us as well. I mean, on his team, you just want to flip-flop this particular piece. Take that ownership that's going to Patrick Williams and give it to the 9% owned Alex Caruso. These guys are like, Caruso's a better per minute dude. Absolutely. They're going to play the exact same amount of minutes. They both have an MPE, but one of those guys is 9 and the other's 23. I have it flipped. I have 22% Caruso and 6% Patrick Williams. It's in this team right away. You can already figure out what swap you want to make to better allocate for value. After that, you have 3 options. You can play Kobe White, 7,200 point guard, certainly gets a bit of a bump with no LaVine. You get DeRozan, 7,400 small forward, power forward, certainly gets a little bit of a bump without LaVine. He's the guy I probably like the most. And then Vooch at 7,700. Looks solid, happy to get there. Center is just always a very easy position to get to, but those are the guys you want. Then, if it's really ugly, you could take a shot on like Ayo Dosunmu if you need to. But I think you feel best about a DeRozan move, a White move, a Vooch move. And then, as I mentioned, I think you flip-flop Alex Caruso and Patrick Williams.
Isn't it funny, though, how last year was the big 3 with LaVine, DeRozan, and Vooch. You and I, every time we talked about it, it's like, oh, they're all exactly the same price.
Yeah.
And, like musical chair style, just pick which one. It's hard to say. And now you've got DeRozan, Vooch, and Kobe White almost all at the same exact price as well.
It never stops.
No.
It never stops. These guys are like perpetually $7,500
every time. I mean, the way I see it though, and the way ownership and the boom bust tool sees it, just looking at like optimal rates and leverage scores and all of that with Zach LaVine off the floor in this matchup, slow pace game. I think the total's, what did I say? 220, I think, in this one. Is it 229 actually? 229. Yeah. Patrick Williams super negatively leveraged, and then DeRozan, Vooch, Kobe White. It's all whatever, -3, -4%. They're viable options. They're just not priorities. Like if you were hand building a lineup, you're probably not going out of your way to jam one of these Chicago guys, but they're all just viable on a 7-game slate.
Yep, exactly. They have legitimately 5 dudes that are going to be regular occurrences in lineups. You're basically gonna see like one bull in everything that people are doing.
Exactly. Yeah. And probably not three. Hopefully not three. What about the Phoenix Suns to wrap this one up?
Add them to the list of teams that look like Charlotte and Boston.
Yeah, well, and kind of Cleveland too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, no ownership coming into anybody on Phoenix. I actually have a pretty big stand on Kevin Durant at 3% ownership, but I don't have, like, it's not based on anything other than it just seems to be working positionally for me today. And, it's Kevin Durant, so I don't go out of my way to try to correct it when I have a stand on KD. And then you look at the FanDuel side, Beal is getting 18% ownership. It's single digits there. It's just not that great of a matchup. I mean, Phoenix is facing a team that's either dead last or second to last in pace. The Bulls defense, oddly enough, is like middle of the pack. So this is a pretty bad spot. I have Phoenix losing 3.5 possessions below their average just by being in this matchup. So there's no ownership coming into Phoenix, and I think that's justified.
I get it. Yeah, it makes sense. And you look at this team. How many minutes have they all played together? I think like 200.
A lot more than it's been. They've been together and all playing like a shit ton of playing time as of late.
Yeah.
I can give it to you right now. By the way, in 7,000 minutes for the Bulls over the past 3 years with DeRozan, Vooch, and Levine all starting the game, they're at plus 0.4 per 100 possessions. They're just dead even.
Yeah, exactly.
Pull the plug already, for real.
Yeah, how many minutes have we got from Booker, Beal, and Durant together this year?
I'm on it right now. Booker, Beal, and Durant in games where all 3 of those guys have played this season. Durant has played 406 minutes. Booker has played 405. Beal has played 351.
Do you have per minute production in those games?
Not on a fantasy rate, but I can give you like everything else.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the minutes they've played alongside of each other. And obviously you can, stagger a big 3 like that, but yeah, it's just tough when you've got 3 guys that in some capacity demand the basketball.
Close to 30% usage for Booker, 26% for Durant, and 20 for Beal and
that's in the games they not alongside each other, but the games they played together.
Yeah, that is just those 3 guys did show up in the game.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's a relatively tough team to get to. Let's wrap it up with this. Position by position before you guys go. We got north of 500 people watching with us. Appreciate you guys. And remember, like we said, the Sims tool or lineup generator, anything you want to check out is down there. And hit us up if you have questions. Check out the tutorials. We can point you in those directions. Shout out to Jorge and Peter for the huge wins yesterday using the tools. And thanks, Jorge, for that big super chat earlier in the show. And BetMGM, bet 5, get 158 in bonus bets. Do not forget about that. If you're in one of those states. Link is down there still. All right, so point guard. Let's do it like this.
Okay.
Instead of just like favorite player at each position, let's go top option and then top value. Now, I say top option because you're not going to get everybody like 10, 11K, but favorite guy, mid-range or up at each position, and then favorite value at each position, given what we know now. And there's still a lot of uncertainty.
I might even expand on that one. How's that?
Let's hear it.
All right. So the top option, at least based on ownership right now, and one of the first guys you would get to from a cash game perspective is going to be Mike Conley. I don't love him as much in GPPs, but he is going to be very popular at 5,400 given that matchup. No real problems with it. Similar story for Luke Kennard, but we'll also see him at a different position. For me, in terms of like GPP plays that aren't getting a lot of love, I like $5,300 Jalen Suggs, and I like getting to a 9K Kyrie Irving. Both of those guys are currently projected for like 3% ownership. So they are my GPP pivots. I think if we're saying who is the best value, it's probably Conley, but I don't love it.
Okay. And that's point guard?
That's point guard. Shooting guard. I got to save my sheet and reopen it again. We will get to shooting guard in a second, but first, blah, 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 something, 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 other words that cover time until I get my Excel sheet back up. I'm just about done making up random shit. So, shooting guards. See, that wasn't too bad, right? That was captivating audio.
It's all right. Yeah. I
Top
mean,
shoot. I tried.
not bad. So look, you're going to be looking at up top, Donovan Mitchell, Booker, Irving, and there's not a ton up top of shooting guard.
No, there's not. I mean, Kyrie's got that ability as well, but I've already shouted him out. Luke Kennard is probably the best option here. He's pulling the most ownership, 5,400. John Conchar there. If you're looking for value, he's going to be the value option at shooting guard. If you need to pay up, it's probably Anthony Edwards for me, and he's projected for 21% ownership.
What about Barrett?
Looks good. I'm neutral to the field. Field's at 20%. I'm at 20%. I agree with it. I like it, but I am cheering against him on Prize Picks.
All right. You can have the best of both worlds sometimes,
One can only hope.
Small forward.
That's going to be Conchar again if you're looking for value. You have Patrick Williams there again for value. Scotty Barnes is the highest owned small forward option. I think that stands out both as like a pay up option and as a guy that you guys should be getting to. If you're looking for a guy that people aren't getting to that I am, 7% owned Vince Williams is going to play a lot of minutes for the Memphis Grizzlies today. I will be willing to take my chances there.
Yeah, and then at power forward, I mean, based on Tillman news, Jaren Jackson already looks good, but Jaren Jackson could be, next level on a slate like this.
Jaren Jackson is probably the best guy you're going to be like paying for. Slow-mo is sitting there as value. Patrick Williams is sitting there as value. If Tillman ends up out, Santi Aldama probably becomes the best guy in this range. I like the idea of getting a bit of sneaky Kevin Durant. I like getting a little bit of sneaky Isaiah Stewart if he happens to be in. And then just simply, if you feel like the Jaren Jackson ownership gets too high, Karl Anthony Towns is sitting there $200 cheaper in a very nice matchup.
At center, how tough is it to get to just Joel Embiid right now with the value we have?
For me,
be too difficult.
Not hard. I've got 48%. We've got him projected for 16% ownership. I'm going to do whatever I can to pay up for Joel Embiid. He is by far my favorite pay up option. The Tillman ownership makes some sense. He will be, at least if he's in, one of the most popular center plays that you can get to. I find it easier to try to zig while everybody else zags there. I think value, Maxi Kleba is a little sneaky at no ownership whatsoever. If we're going to be talking about some of these guys getting love, Maxi is there for you. Favorite center option, though, for me today, if we're ignoring Joel Embiid because he's very expensive, everybody obviously knows they should play Embiid. If Wendell Carter Jr. is the starting center for the Orlando Magic today, you have to be ready for him to play 30 minutes.
Not bad, man.
Not at all.
Yeah, a little late start, but we got in, we got out.
We good. Ready to go eat some food.
Yeah, me too. I haven't eaten today.
Same.
It's good though, man.
I know.
Just tastes better, It
does. It does. Build up a little hunger.
I've been eating since 5:15 last night.
I didn't really have much after that time either. I had a lot of barbecue chicken sliders in the American Airlines lounge while I was watching the first half of the football game, or the Lions game.
Follow Josh Engleman. I'm at Loughran_D, LOUGHY_D2. Remember, all of our betting stuff, whether it's NBA, NFL, Josh's Prize Picks content over at the Odd Shopper channel. We just crossed 116,000 subs. I mean, come on, man. Putting in the work over there. It's been fun. We'd love to have you guys come hang if you're into that type of stuff, more so than just DFS or both. Doesn't matter. See you back here. Deeper dive tonight, live before lock. Everyone's got you covered. And have a great rest of the day, my friends. Peace.